Sorry, take your seats. The floor is not open for everyone yet, at least. But please take your seats. Thank you. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen.
الوفود المقرين سيداتي سادتي الآن أفتتح الدورة الرقم 194 للجمعية العمومية. ستذكرون
Heard the Secretary General introduce the annual
يعرفنا بالتقرير السنوي.
And we heard a number of speakers during the general debate on that report. We were not able to conclude the agenda item as there were more delegations and observers requesting the floor. So this morning we will continue by hearing the rest of the statements relating to agenda item 9 before we move on to the agenda items previously placed for deliberations this morning, that is agenda items 12, 13, and 14. We have one more member state who has requested the floor on agenda item 9, and I will suggest giving the floor first to that delegation. After that intervention, I will close the list of speakers for agenda item 9 and then continue with the observers that had not the opportunity to speak yesterday but have requested the floor by now. So, if you so agree, I would like, please, under agenda item 9, the Secretary General's report, to give the floor to the distinguished representative of Trinidad and Tobago, please. You have the floor.
Good morning, Secretary General, Acting President, distinguished delegates. Thank you for giving me the floor. Trinidad and Tobago thanks the Secretary General for this comprehensive report, which we know was the result of hard work and long hours. My delegation notes that all contractors paid their overhead charges in full, and we commend them for responsibly fulfilling their obligations. We thank member states and contractors who made contributions to the voluntary trust funds, which will facilitate the participation of members from developing states in the meetings of the LTC and the Council. My delegation notes with appreciation the authorities' endeavors to achieve gender equality and women's empowerment, particularly in marine scientific research, and congratulates Dr. McQuaid on becoming a recipient of the Secretary General's Award for Excellence in Deep-Sea Research. Trinidad and Tobago commends the Secretary General and the Secretariat for the progress achieved in carrying out the strategic research priorities and the strategic directions. Strategic Research Priority 4, enhancing scientific knowledge and understanding of potential impacts of activities in the area, and Strategic Direction 2, strengthen regulatory framework for activities in the area, are of significant importance. As a small island developing state, we recognize the importance of the ocean and its living and non-living resources to our livelihoods, well-being, and economies. In this regard, we believe that having robust regulations in place and sufficient scientific knowledge of the area and the surrounding marine environment is essential to ensure that the appropriate safeguards are in place for the effective protection and preservation of the marine environment before mining activities can commence. In addition, other important components, such as the financial terms of exploitation contracts, appropriate mechanisms for the sharing of benefits, the adoption of environmental objectives, standards, and thresholds, and the operationalization of the enterprise, among others, must be agreed to by member states. Speed should not take precedence over quality. And in this regard, we believe that incomplete or less robust exploitation regulations should not be adopted in an attempt to meet a deadline. However, my delegation calls on the Council to work assiduously and consistently to make best endeavors to ensure that regulations of the highest standards are developed and that other critical elements are in place in a timely manner. As such, Trinidad and Tobago wishes to reaffirm its commitment to continuing to contribute to the work of the authorities alongside member states within and beyond this room. Thank you, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of Trinidad and Tobago for her statement and turn now to observers. And the first on the list among the observers this morning is Ocean Care, to be followed by the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative. Oh, sorry. Sorry for misleading you. I believe the Holy See is first on the list of observers, and then to be followed by Ocean Care and Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative. So first, I have the Holy See, please. Distinguished representative, you have the floor.
Mr. President, the delegation of the Holy See expresses appreciation and heartfelt congratulations on the conduct of this assembly and the smooth flow of its work due to the competent leadership of the acting president and the newly appointed bureau. This delegation also wishes to join the congratulations expressed by several other delegations to Jamaica, the host state of the work of this assembly, which is celebrating the 60th anniversary of its independence, as well as appreciation for the 40th anniversary of the adoption of the United Nations Convention for the Law of the Sea UNCLOS. Referring to the report of the Secretary General of the International Seabed Authority, according to Article 166, paragraph 4 of the UNCLOS, with reference to the status of the completion of the high-level actions assigned to the Secretariat, ISBA/27/A/2 Addendum 1, the delegation of the Holy See notes that strategic direction number 3, protect the marine environment, is 61.5% complete. And the number 5, build capacity for developing states, is 45% complete. The interest of the Holy See is strongly focused on these two strategic directions, which it firmly supports and promotes. With reference to the protection of the marine environment, it seems appropriate to quote some words from the encyclical letter of Pope Francis, Laudato Si. Greater investment needs to be made in research aimed to understanding more fully the functioning of ecosystems and adequately analyzing the different variables associated with any significant modification of the environment. Because all creatures are connected, each must be cherished with love and respect. For all of us as living creatures are dependent one another. It's Laudato Si number 42. The Holy See promotes an integral approach to ecology in which attention to the environment, the common heritage of mankind, is combined with the centrality of the human person. The words of Pope Francis are pertinent here as well, and I quote, "Since everything is closely interrelated and today's problems call for a vision capable of taking into account every aspect of the global crisis, I suggest that we consider some elements of an integral ecology, one which clearly respects its human and social dimensions." End of quote is number 137 of the encyclical letter. For this reason, the delegation of the Holy See strongly promotes and supports the implementation of strategic direction number 5. It cannot be accepted that some members of the international community, especially the weakest and poorest, are left behind. In conclusion, the words of Pope Francis are a source of inspiration, and I again quote, "The mindset which leaves no room for sincere concern for the environment is the same mindset which lacks concern for the inclusion of the most vulnerable members of society. For the current model, with its emphasis on success and self-reliance, does not appear to favor an investment in efforts to help the slow, the weak, or the less talented to find opportunities in life." End of quote. Laudato Si, number 196. Thank you very much, Mr. President.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Holy See for his intervention and would now like to give the floor to Ocean Care, followed by Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative. But first, distinguished representative of Ocean Care, you have the floor, please.
Thank you, Mr. Acting President, and good morning, Mr. Secretary General, distinguished delegates and fellow observers. We'd like to thank you, Mr. Acting President, for prolonging this agenda item to accommodate us. Our thanks to the Secretary General and the Secretariat for all the hard work that has gone into preparing this comprehensive report. We also reiterate our thanks to our host country of Jamaica for their exceptional hospitality. And finally, since this may be the last time we take the floor during this session, we'd like to say a special thanks to the interpreters for your excellent work throughout these meetings. So, we'd like to begin by associating ourselves with the comments made last night by the Deepsea Conservation Coalition and Greenpeace. And we'll begin our own comments today with an observation regarding paragraph 32 of the Secretary General's annual report, which describes the creation of 4 new areas of particular environmental interest in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone. It is claimed that these areas would place 44% of the CCZ under protection. However, the APEIs were only designed to protect a core area measuring 200 by 200 kilometers within each APEI. So that's actually only 25% of the area designated for protection. The remaining 75% of each APEI, measuring 100 kilometers from each side of the core protected areas, would in fact only be a buffer zone. Although no mining would be permitted in these buffer zones, they would be subject to harmful sediment plumes, toxic discharge, and noise emissions generated by extractive activity in adjacent mining zones. We would like to recall that recent research shows that noise from a single mine in calm weather conditions could travel as far as 500 kilometers. This means that, in fact, nowhere in the CCZ, protected or not, would be shielded from the disruptive effects of noise emissions. These impacts are predicted to disrupt feeding, hunting, mating, communication, and respiratory functions of marine life in the affected areas throughout the entire water column. So, in reality, the fully protected areas would be far, far less than the proclaimed 44%. But actually, the key point here is that by determining what percentage to protect, you also determine what percentage to destroy. Turning to the question of sustainable development, we note the repeated references in the Secretary-General's report to the sustainable development of deep seabed mineral resources. We'd like to emphasize that deep sea mining cannot be considered a sustainable activity. SDG Target 14.1 calls to reduce marine pollution, whereas deep sea mining would only increase it through toxic discharge, noise, and light emissions. SDG Target 14.2 calls to protect and restore ecosystems, whereas deep sea mining would destroy them. What's more, according to the best available scientific evidence, this destruction would be irreparable. In June of this year, the UNEP Finance Initiative published a briefing paper on harmful marine extractives, which was designed to help financial institutions understand the financial risks and environmental impacts of deep sea mining. The briefing concludes that there is no foreseeable way in which the financing of deep sea mining activities can be viewed as consistent with the Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Principles or compatible with the spirit and intent of the Sustainable Blue Economy. And yet, here we are in 2022, talking about opening up a vast new extractive sector that would outstrip any mining operation ever seen on land. A mining operation that risks disrupting the world's largest carbon sink at a time when its preservation should be our obsession. The ocean is dynamic, alive, moving space with chains of connection that spread far and wide. We will not be able to neatly contain the damage or control it. Deep sea mining would perpetuate the same behaviors that drove us into the environmental crisis in the first place. Another of the conclusions of the UNEP Finance Initiative is that instead of supporting the potential deep sea mining sector, financial institutions could focus efforts on alternative strategies to transition towards a circular economy that promotes the reuse and recycling of materials and innovative technologies to reduce demand for raw materials. Indeed, the battery industry is already moving away from using the kinds of metals found in the deep ocean. Tesla uses a battery that contains no nickel or cobalt. The world's second biggest electric car manufacturer, BYD, announced last year that it is removing cobalt, nickel, and manganese from its vehicle batteries. And the Chinese company SAIC has started producing hydrogen cell vehicles. There are also some promising complementary social solutions, such as urban mining, for example, which aims to start making better use of old, unused household tech items like laptops, phones, and televisions. Less than 20% of these dormant resources are currently recycled. There is great potential to optimize such solutions. Even the metals company recently admitted, and I quote, "Technology changes rapidly in the industries that utilize our materials. This could result in a decline in demand for our metal products. Changes in demand for minerals could significantly affect our profitability," end quote. Deep sea mining is a dangerous experiment. It will not be sustainable. It will not be worth the risk. As noted by the Deep Sea Conservation Coalition, adopting regulations, no matter how strong, would signal the start of deep sea mining. Ocean Care therefore aligns itself with the call of the Alliance of Countries for a Moratorium on Deep Sea Mining, a call made also by the European Parliament and the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. We also recognize and sincerely welcome the growing number of voices from other states here at the ISA that are speaking up in favor of nature, of science, and of precaution. We also would particularly like to express our support for Chile's proposal to include a new agenda item in the Assembly to discuss the issues relating to the triggering of the 2-year rule. Conversations around the 2-year rule are already happening in the sidelines of ISA meetings, as well as in other political fora. As the prospect of deep sea mining comes under greater public and political scrutiny, we consider it to be essential in the name of transparency and public interest to bring these conversations into a formal space for dialogue at the ISA. Finally, on a different note, we join other delegates in recognizing the ISA's commitment to the inclusion and empowerment of women, highlighted numerous times in yesterday's statements and in the Secretary General's report on the UN Decade of Ocean Science and Sustainable Development. We'd like to take this opportunity to suggest that the ISA might consider extending these principles to the language used in ISA processes and documents pertaining to the subject at the heart of the debate here, the common heritage. In English, the tendency is to refer to the common heritage of mankind, not humankind. We note that in French, however, one refers to le patrimoine commun de l'humanité, and in Spanish, de la humanidad. We are mindful of the fact that we sit in the presence of lawyers and diplomats who understand the weight of words more than most. We hope, therefore, that you might indulge our suggestion that the ISA reinforces its commitments to the inclusion and empowerment of women in its processes and written products by breaking with outdated terminology and referring henceforth not to mankind, but humankind. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ocean Care for her statement and would now like to invite the distinguished representative of the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative to take the floor. You have the floor, please.
Thank you very much. Since this is the first time the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative has been given the floor in this assembly, we would like to congratulate the President for the election and thank the interim President for your work. DOSI is very happy to congratulate our colleague Kirsty McQuaid on winning the Secretary General's Award for Excellence in Deep Sea Research. DOSI would like to thank the Secretary General for his detailed report and appreciates the progress made by the Secretariat from 2021 to 2022. Specifically, DOSI appreciates some of the progress mentioned in paragraphs 32 and 38 of the report and the progress made on Strategic Direction 3, Protect the Marine Environment, Strategic Direction 4, Promote and encourage marine scientific research in the area, reported in Annex 2. DOSI particularly welcomes initiatives involving collaborations with biodiversity platforms like Node on the Ocean Biodiversity Information System, OBIS, and letter of cooperation with World Register of Marine Species, WORMS, and looks forward to further collaborations and involvement with the scientific community. We applaud the efforts made in the implementation of the Deep Data platform, but note that most scientists have found deep data to be difficult to use at best and will benefit from broader scientific cyber infrastructure expertise and advice. DOSI would therefore also be grateful for an update on any improvement to deep data, given it was launched in 2019, but it still has limited functionality. DOSI encourages the authority to actively pursue the aforementioned key strategic directions with increased convictions in the coming years. Decision-making must always be based in robust science. At this point, DOSI wishes to note and emphasize that despite the progress made, there is a long way to go in the quest of advancing marine scientific knowledge, and consequently, its use in ensuring the effective protection of the marine environment in the area. Based on our current scientific understanding, deep seabed mining will result in biodiversity loss and irreversible harm to deep sea ecosystems, including the functions and services that they provide. Scientists have just begun to understand biodiversity, ecosystem function, and resilience in the deep ocean. A recent peer-reviewed scientific study showed that 60% of the scientific categories assessed for regions with mining exploration contracts were shown to have no or next to none scientific knowledge to enable evidence-based management, and only 1% had enough. Therefore, the international community is currently not in a position to reliably predict the extent and severity of the expected impacts from commercial mining, including the plumes, contaminant release and toxicity, noise, vibration, and light, how this will affect marine life, and any direct or indirect effects of ecosystem services like climate regulation, commercially important fisheries, or other ocean users. Available tools, such as scientific models that can help to predict impact, require baseline data that are not yet fully available. And small-scale in situ tests to verify these models' accuracy only go so far. Scientific approaches such as this take time. In short, we know there is much to be lost. What we don't know yet is how to ensure protection. The Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative would like to reiterate that rushing the regulations to meet a 2-year goal will run counter to the precautionary principle, which requires member states to err on the side of caution. Despite the diligent work by the many here in Kingston and the respective countries, the regulations that relate to the understanding and protection of the marine environment are simply not ready. For example, the ISA has yet to agree on overarching strategic environmental goals and objectives, define serious harm and associated adverse change, as well as a specific criteria to operationalize, measure, and monitor it, or put in place effective regional environmental management plans. DOSI believes that rushing to meet the 2-year rule will not allow much of the relevant scientific research currently underway to be completed, communicated, and taken into account, preventing critical, scientifically informed decision-making. We agree wholeheartedly with the many states who said that 2 years is absolutely insufficient. This is particularly the case when considering the acquisition and incorporation of the necessary scientific research to inform best environmental practices. The UN Decade of Ocean Science offers a timely opportunity to gather resources and expertise and apply these to fill some of the deep sea science gaps outlined above. DOSI would like to encourage the authority to continue to enforce the work pursuant to the implementation of its action plan in subordinated nations decade of ocean science for sustainable development in the upcoming years. In this manner, the authority can engage robustly in an evolving global conversation, acknowledging the complex interconnectedness of the ocean, climate and biodiversity in our environment, the potential impacts of an already stressed planet, and working toward breaking down silos between global work streams. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Deep Ocean Stewardship Initiative for her statement, and now invite the distinguished representative of the Inter-American Association for Environmental Defense to take the floor. The floor is yours, please.
Gracias, señor presidente. En representación de AIDA, la primera organización regional de América Latina en obtener estatus de observadores ante la autoridad, quiero primero felicitarlo por su nombramiento, así como felicitar al señor secretario general por los avances sustanciales presentados en su informe. Expresamos también nuestra gratitud al gobierno y a la gente de Jamaica por recibirnos con tanta calidez. Agradecemos poder participar en este foro por primera vez, sobre todo porque hasta el lunes en la mañana mi organización, al igual que muchas otras del continente, éramos formalmente espectadores de este proceso que venimos siguiendo y estudiando de cerca desde al menos el año 2018. Mientras revisamos los importantes avances que se reportan en el documento ISBA-27-A-4, el público general del que formábamos parte hasta hace poco mira con preocupación que si bien los esfuerzos en la promoción de la investigación científica son evidentes, sus conclusiones, como hemos visto en numerosas intervenciones, básicamente indican la necesidad de más información científica relevante. Sin embargo, caminamos hacia la adopción de una regulación que no considera adecuadamente la profunda incertidumbre que pesa sobre la actividad. Habiendo estudiado diversos sistemas comparados de evaluación de impacto ambiental, llama la atención que los estándares propuestos son mucho más flexibles que buena parte de aquellos con que las legislaciones domésticas evalúan impactos de actividades más pequeñas sobre ecosistemas significativamente más estudiados que los del fondo marino. El principio de patrimonio común de la humanidad debiera llamar a una mayor precaución que aquella utilizada en los sistemas domésticos, pues los riesgos e impactos afectan a la humanidad completa, incluyendo a las generaciones futuras, que ya deberán enfrentarse a un mundo donde el cambio climático y sus efectos serán la normalidad. Es difícil entender para el público cómo una toma de decisiones que debiera estar basada en la mejor información científica disponible posterga la conformación de esa base sabiendo los grandes riesgos que enfrenta. Como toda obra humana, es una base sólida y suficiente la que permite que la estructura sobre ella sea firme. La incertidumbre científica actual y la falta de requerimiento de líneas de base rigurosas para los planes de trabajo amenazan con hacer colapsar lo que hasta ahora ha sido posible construir, con consecuencias irreversibles que como humanidad deberíamos evitar a toda costa. También se observa con preocupación cómo desde julio de 2021 se ha avanzado casi ciegamente en el cumplimiento del mandato del párrafo 15 de la sección 1 del anexo del acuerdo de implementación, y en cambio se han discutido muy escuetamente las distintas interpretaciones que tienen las delegaciones de dicha disposición y las implicancias de su aplicación, lo que esperamos se revierta con la discusión que el señor presidente programó para el día de hoy. Invitamos humildemente a los miembros de esta Asamblea a apoyar la propuesta de Chile, pues la discusión de este asunto es solo oportuna si se hace de inmediato. Por todo esto es que compartimos las declaraciones de las delegaciones de Chile, Costa Rica, Nueva Zelanda y España, entre otros, y apoyamos la iniciativa de establecer un receso precautorio si es que una moratoria no fuera viable, ya que en el estado actual de la discusión la única forma es esta la única forma de cumplir responsablemente con el mandato del artículo 145 de la Convención. Nuevamente, muchas gracias, señor presidente.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Inter-American Association for Environmental Defense and turn now to the distinguished representative of Earthworks. Please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. President, distinguished delegates, and fellow observers. I give this intervention on behalf of Earthworks. As one of the only youth and the sole representative from Peru, I want to thank Jamaica for its hospitality and the Secretariat for the updates and efforts in the inclusion of science and knowledge through the action plan of marine scientific research. We join other delegations in thanking the Secretary General and Secretariat for this report. We'll focus on paragraph 35 of the ISBA 27/A/4. Today, we know more about the ocean than ever before, but the data and science are still unclear in many aspects. For example, there's advancing science directly in the areas, but there's little to no science concerning connectivity. The deep sea ecosystems are not isolated. The ocean is a fluid medium like the atmosphere. What happens in the middle of the Pacific will affect the ecological processes not only in the deep sea. There is a risk that it will impact upwelling systems like the ones in Peru, within the borders of the Pacific, where our fisheries, local communities, and national biodiversity thrive. There is much we still don't know, but also what worries us now is not only the science we're receiving or lacking, but how we're using the science we're receiving currently and how we're politicizing it. and partializing it for a very pro-moving forward stance. So I want to ask, even if the science showed in clear, bold letters the environmental domino effect deep seabed mining will have in the ocean, the climate, and food security, is there even a system where we could postpone or cancel future seabed mining operations? Is there even a legal route or a procedure where the delegations could propose to defer the regulations or implement a moratorium? Or is the ISA built in a way that despite anything and everything, it will get what the contractors and sponsoring nations want, despite not benefits, but the drawbacks to humanity? I might be the youngest person attending today, and I've come with an open mind and open heart to comprehend every organization and member state position. We feel that a general perception of the ISA is that they're more worried about the legacy it will leave its contractors and friends rather than the legacy it will leave youth in this planet. So we kindly ask not to only be included in the e-learning platform of the deep dive, like paragraph 35 says. We ask to be included in a global youth consultation process. During this climate emergency and in a context where our atmosphere cannot sustain 1 more ton of CO2 emitted, the risk to our future is high. We also embrace the inclusion to more consultation and more time for debate like the one proposed by Chile. And I finish by asking fellow delegates to see things from a different perspective. First, to understand that knowledge and science do not guarantee sustainability. 1,000 years ago, we had the most amount of science and we had the least amount of science and expertise, and we had the most amount of ocean sustainable extractive activities, some of which we can't still replicate today. Criteria and decisions based on science guarantee sustainability. The decisions and outcomes should be made after data and science, not predetermined since 1994. Second, the deep sea doesn't have borders. They don't belong to a single country. They are ours as a whole. So I beg you, delegates, don't only look to your embassies, ministers, or capitals. Look at the youth of the world, because we're in a very difficult position. We're already and will continue to get hit with the most damaging effects of the environmental crisis. So we're here because we know that our future and our maximum quality of life does not depend on these minerals being extracted from the deep sea, but on the contrary, it may rely on leaving those minerals alone. We have over 75,000 people that agree with us from all over the world who have signed a petition for a moratorium in the last week alone for more time for science, debate, and consultation. I know to delay or abandon personal expectations on mining will be challenging. I know that your countries have worked tirelessly for these regulations to occur, but let me beg you, may we rest, may we go dance, may we go swim and laugh and play before we spoil this earth. Thank you.
I thank the distinguished representative of Earthworks for his statement, and we will now finish off with two observers attending online. First, I have Ocean North, to be followed by Ocean Foundation. But first, Ocean North, distinguished representative, you have the floor.
Just checking sure the audios work. Haven't submitted an intervention on this platform before.
We can hear you.
Great. Thank you for the floor, Mr. Acting President. Excellencies, fellow delegates, and observers, we would first like to express our gratitude for being approved to become an observer at the International Seabed Authority, and our excitement at being able to participate virtually this week and in person this November. The ISA's requirement to ensure the effective protection of the marine environment in the face of deep seabed mining is a great responsibility, and one that cannot be ensured if exploitation is approved without the guaranteed protection of the marine environment, on which we all rely. Although we are a new observer, we have been following the work being done here closely and look forward to contributing to the best of our abilities. To this end, we have observations on the Secretary General's report, which we greatly appreciate and for which we thank the Secretary General and his hardworking team. In paragraph 26, we note the support for the Action Plan for Marine Scientific Research, which was further supported by numerous delegations throughout the Council meeting, and we urge the authority as a whole to increase its commitment to research, capacity building, and knowledge sharing for the sake of protecting biodiversity and the already overburdened ocean, and not for the sake of exploitative profit. The effective protection of the marine environment must be the priority because exploitation done without an understanding of the consequences cannot be undone. There is precedent for this both in the Antarctic Treaty System and the Central Arctic Ocean Agreement, which are proving critical for the management of productive marine ecosystems. In paragraph 46, we note, along with other delegations, that Tuvalu rescinded their sponsorship of Circular Metals Tuvalu Ltd. in order to reaffirm their commitment to the common stewardship responsibility, and they now stand firm in their opposition to deep seabed mining. We suggest that the annual report should reflect this change, and we urge other sponsoring states to consider the significance of prioritizing the marine environment above exploitation, especially considering the insufficient state of the regulations, standards, and guidelines, which are mentioned in paragraph 38, and whose alarming state was made clear during the Council meeting. As an organization who has been working on the BBNJ negotiations for some time, we appreciate paragraph 50's reference to BBNJ, considering it will apply to the area beyond national jurisdiction, notably including the seabed. The BBNJ instrument will enable the creation of marine protected areas, the implementation of environmental impact assessments, will foster capacity building, and will address marine genetic resources and benefit sharing in international waters. Any exploitation of the seabed would intersect with the mandate of BBNJ and would thus require communication between both bodies to ensure the effective protection of biodiversity and the marine environment. It is crucial that activities proposed for the area are compliant with BBNJ and do not lead to a loss of biodiversity. Ocean ecosystems, such as the seafloor, deep sea, sunlight zone, and coastal areas are not separate, but connected. And neither the ISA nor BBNJ can successfully achieve their mandates if seabed ecosystems are irreversibly destroyed. Therefore, it is premature to advance an exploitation regime under the ISA when BBNJ is not finalized. Setting the terms of environmental protection first should always be the way forward, particularly given the dual crises of biodiversity loss and climate change. We believe that the ISA should be following the lead of BBNJ in matters relating to marine biodiversity. In addition to the opportunity presented by the imminent completion of BBNJ, we point to significant developments at the UNGA with Resolution 7675, establishing the right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, as well as the call for a moratorium on deep seabed mining announced by states at the UN Ocean Conference, and supported by numerous organizations, companies, parliaments, and the International Union for the Conservation of Nature in their Resolution 122. These developments are mirrored by the collective commitment to the UN Decade of Ocean Science, as well as the language of the high-level panel stressing the need for the precautionary principle and science-based decision-making. With all this in mind, we welcome Chile's proposal for a new agenda item addressing the 2-year rule and stress the importance that Rule 12 is adhered to by allowing a vote to go forward on the inclusion of this topic. An open discussion of the 2-year rule and its repercussions is central to the current work of the ISA and is further important for good governance and transparency. We also welcome Ocean Care's suggestion that the ISA demonstrate further commitment to equality and representation by addressing the linguistic inconsistency of the common heritage of mankind, when humankind is not only more apt, but more inclusive of all the people on this earth who both depend on the ocean and are stewards of it. Lastly, we would like to express the importance of the responsibility the authority holds over the common heritage of humankind and the necessity of protecting the seabed for the overall health of the ocean. Developing a regulatory framework for protecting seabed resources should not be rushed, and we urge delegates to take the time needed to understand the environmental and socioeconomic repercussions of exploitation, to discuss the stress placed on the process by the 2-year rule, and to consider the opportunity a moratorium presents to protect the environment and conduct sufficient research. The health of the ocean is something we have power over right now, which will impact communities for generations to come. Thank you very much.
I thank the distinguished representative of Ocean North for her statement, and would now like to invite the final speaker under the general debate on agenda item 9 to take the floor. Distinguished representative of Ocean Foundation, the floor is yours.
Hello. Can you all hear me all right?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Thank you kindly. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you to the people and the government of Jamaica for their hospitality, which is felt even from afar. As it's the first time we're taking the floor at this session, or ever at the International Seabed Authority, we congratulate the acting president and the Bureau. Thank you to Canada for speaking in favor of the Ocean Foundation's application for observer status, and to all of you for welcoming us. We would also like to congratulate Dr. McQuaid. Dear Excellencies, delegates, and fellow observers, the Ocean Foundation is a community foundation whose mission is to support, strengthen, and promote organizations around the world dedicated to reversing the trend of destruction of ocean environments. We're extremely honored to be part of this important conversation and hope to provide insight regarding best practices for financial regulations and disclosure, permitting and environmental documents, monitoring and compliance, capacity building and equitable stakeholder engagement, and the consideration of and respect for underwater cultural heritage. We express our thanks to the Secretary General and the entire Secretariat for your annual report. We align ourselves with the comments by the observers that spoke yesterday evening and this morning. Will echo many of the same themes. First, regarding Annex 2, the status of implementation, we'll speak to Strategic Direction 1, realize the role of the authority in a global context. The Ocean Foundation would like to encourage further cooperation and participation by the authority in the global environmental regime, in line with strong and pervasive recognition that the interconnectedness of our natural world must be reflected in our governance processes in order for humans to succeed in restoring and safeguarding what some call the triple nexus of ocean, climate, and biodiversity. We encourage the Secretariat to further realize the authority's global role as the steward of the common heritage of humankind through coordination with other global bodies and processes in order to cast the widest possible net for stakeholders who may have a strong desire to engage with and particular knowledge to contribute to the ongoing development of regulations, including as observers. This would support Strategic Direction 1, as well as 8, regarding organizational performance, and 9, regarding transparency. In line with its stated support of the SDGs, the Secretariat could be guided by the United Nations document titled Stakeholder Engagement and the 2030 Agenda, a practical guide. To be clear, the Ocean Foundation is encouraging the Secretariat to proactively seek to engage diverse stakeholders as observers. While interest in the fate of the seabed in the area has never been higher, many may not know all the current opportunities for engagement. Specifically, we echo Earthworks' call for a global youth consultation. There are many fora in which to realize this aspect of the authority's role on the global stage. The UN High-Level Political Forum on Sustainable Development, the United Nations Program Finance Initiative, the United Nations Environmental Program Finance Initiative, and the UNESCO 2001 Convention on the Protection of Underwater Cultural Heritage are but examples. Relatedly, the Ocean Foundation believes that protecting our underwater cultural heritage, both tangible and intangible, can and should be at the forefront of ongoing negotiations in Kingston, and we thank all those who have supported consideration thereof. On paragraphs 47 and 48 of the annual report, regarding the Secretary General's recent formal statements on UNCLOS, the Ocean Foundation thanks the Secretary General for recognizing that, quote, "We are becoming more and more reliant on the ocean, particularly developing states whose rights to access ocean resources should be respected and even strengthened. We support acknowledgement by Costa Rica and others in recent weeks that the ocean resources, including those of the area, are vast, diverse, and intergenerational. And we would like the authority and member states to consider the Secretary General's statements on the access of rights of developing states in that context. To that end, we reiterate further support for engagement by Secretariat with other aspects of the international global community, especially those institutions and groups with a focus on sustainable finance, equity, and intergenerational human rights. We agree with the Secretary General's recognition of the ecological unity of the ocean and the need, now more than ever, to apply the precautionary approach, and his insistence on consistency throughout the UN system. For example, echoing the Deepsea Conservation Coalition, we stress that a recent UN General Assembly resolution recognized a right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment as a human right, noting that this right is related to other rights and existing international law. The work of the authority does not exist in a vacuum and must, like the work undertaken on all multilateral agreements, consistently across the UN system, be done in furtherance of this right. Unlike the Secretary General, we are not concerned that other parts of the UN system may undermine the convention, but instead, the Ocean Foundation believes that the current global impetus to break down silos and to see global governance as necessarily The Ocean Foundation believes that the current global impetus to break down silos and to see global governance as necessarily interconnected is instead a rising tide that will lift all boats. In other words, engagement with and contextualization within the global environmental regime will strengthen UNCLOS. We agree with the Secretary General's acknowledgement that UNCLOS is dynamic, flexible, and modern. Consequently, we believe that member states will be able to honor and respect the convention while acting with concern and respect for developing nations, indigenous communities, future generations, biodiversity, and ecosystem services, all while relying on the best available science. The Ocean Foundation strongly supports the calls for a moratorium on deep sea mining. In this session, we support Chile's proposal and a vote thereon if there is not consensus. Thank you kindly for your time.
I thank the distinguished representative of the Ocean Foundation for her statement. That concludes the general debate under agenda item 9. Before moving to the action points, I would like to thank all members and observers that have spoken under this agenda item and given their statements. And I would like to invite the Secretary General to provide any comments he may wish to give on the basis of the general debate. Mr. Secretary General, please, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And let me also thank all those members who spoke on the annual report. It was a good number. I forgot how many, but I think it's one of the longest general debates that we've had over the years. And I believe that the comments were overwhelmingly positive. So I thank you very much for that. And I thank you also for sharing your priorities and interests with us, and can assure you that we've taken good note of the report and will of the discussion, and we'll analyze the various statements afterwards and use them to guide our work in future. Obviously, I'm not going to respond to every single comment because that would take all day, and we've already had a very lengthy debate. But I will just respond to a few specific points and questions. In no particular order, a number of delegations mentioned their contributions to the various funds, and I thank all those who have contributed to the various trust funds that we operate. I thank, in particular, France for announcing a new contribution yesterday, and look forward to discussing the precise nature of that contribution in due course. I thank also Mexico for making the comment that contributions to scientific research are highly valuable. There was a specific question concerning the Support Trust Fund, which is referred to in the report. I can provide a clarification. The Support Trust Fund is the place where we keep extra budgetary funds. It is actually fully detailed both in the report of the Finance Committee, but also in a document, ISBA/27/FC/6, which reports on that fund. The amount that is shown in the report, almost $2 million, is the cumulative amount that has been contributed through that fund. Any movements in that fund are shown also in the audited financial statements, and I would refer you to those. Basically, the Support Trust Fund is the home for extra budgetary contributions, for example, the contributions of Monaco, contributions of NORAD in relation to the projects that NORAD is supporting, and the forthcoming contribution by the European Commission to the ski project, because obviously we cannot mix those funds with the general administrative fund. So I hope that provides that clarification. Since I mentioned ski, a number of comments were made in support of the Sustainable Seabed Knowledge Initiative, which I thank you for those indications of support. Ski is a huge concept that we realize needs many hands to implement. I'm very grateful for those who have come forward to support various elements of ski, and I look forward to further indications of support for that very important initiative, and support from any direction is most welcome. In the same vein, there were references to the value of deep data database and the connections that have been made with other global databases. I do believe deep data is very widely used. So far, the first 6 months of 2022, deep data received 237,000 hits on the internet. So clearly it is being accessed and utilized. Interestingly, most of those came from, or not most, but the largest single number came from the US. So obviously scientists in the US are finding value in deep data. And I would also mention the training workshops that we have held for deep data and will continue to hold, as well as we intend very shortly to put some FAQ on the website just to help users navigate that experience. There was a question, actually I'm not sure if it was a question or a statement, as to whether ISA follows the standards of conduct for the International Civil Service. Well, I assure you that it does, and all the relevant rules, regulations, administrative instructions, etc., can be found on the website in the working languages of the authority and are fully consistent with the rules of the UN. There was a comment from one regional group about underrepresentation in the Secretariat, and I must say I fully agree with that comment and acknowledge it. I would be very happy to discuss that matter with that regional group, but for now I would just highlight that one problem that is lack of applications. So perhaps we need to sit down and have a discussion how to address that problem and try to remedy that situation. There were a number of comments about the Intergovernmental Conference. And I take note of those. I believe the most developed comment or proposal came from Netherlands, and we took very careful note of that comment, which was obviously shared by others. We are more than willing to cooperate with delegations and to find ways in which we can support delegations in terms of participation in the Intergovernmental Conference. I would point out that we would appreciate some guidance from you as to what we can most usefully do to support delegations, noting that the modalities for the conference at this stage of the negotiation rather restrict participation by intergovernmental organizations. For example, and I fully understand the reasons why the president of that conference has decided not to allow general statements at this stage of the negotiation, and intergovernmental organizations are not included in the informal discussions. There are no side events, and unlike ISA, the meetings are not conducted in a hybrid format, nor is there streaming online of informals. So given those constraints to participation, we are very much open to suggestions as to how we can support you and provide the best cooperation with that process. And certainly we've made all the efforts we can in the past to fully cooperate with that process and be present as much as possible. And I think that's all I need to say, except finally to touch on a very important comment that was made by, picked up by Brazil, and I thank Brazil very much, which is to welcome the forthcoming Women in the Law of the Sea conference, one of the activities we are convening in connection with the 40th anniversary of UNCLOS, and to remind you that the dates for that conference will be the 26th to the 28th of September, to be convened in New York City. And I look forward very much to a very inclusive and interesting conference. We have gone to great lengths to include in the agenda of that conference women, and particularly women from countries and areas of expertise that are generally unrepresented or underrepresented in such conferences. So I'm looking forward very much to a very exciting conference, and I invite all of you to follow the website for further announcements and to attend. I'm just being reminded I need to say something that I forgot. To inform you that the conference will, of course, be co-chaired by two of the most eminent women in law of the sea, and that is Judge Maria Teresa Infante of Chile, Judge of the International Tribunal of the Law of the Sea, and Anik Demafi, the former Director of the UN Office of the Ocean Affairs and Law of the Sea, and Director General of Indemer in France until very recently. So really, it's going to be a fantastic conference, and I'm looking forward to it very much. With that, Mr. President, I thank you once again, and I think that is all I want to say. Thank you.
I thank the Secretary General very much for his comments. I would now like to draw your attention to the recommendations as contained in paragraph 43 of ISPA/27/A/4, the report of the Secretary General on the implementation of the action plan of the authority in support of the United Nations Decade of Ocean Science for Sustainable Development. And as will be seen there in its paragraph 43, the Assembly is invited to A, take note of the information provided in the present report. Point B, request the Secretary General to continue his efforts to mobilize the necessary resources for the implementation of the strategic research priorities under the Action Plan for Marine Scientific Research. And finally, C, encourage all members of the authority, other states, relevant international organizations, academic, scientific, and technical institutions, philanthropic organizations, corporations, and private persons to contribute to the implementation of the Action Plan for Marine Scientific Research. May I propose that the Assembly approves those recommendations? I see no objections. It is so decided. I also wish to propose that the Assembly take note of the annual report of the Secretary General. I see no objections. It is so decided. Thank you very much. We have then concluded agenda item 9, and as suggested in opening our meeting this morning, I now intend to take up agenda items 12, 13, and 14 of the provisional agenda concerning report of the Finance Committee, adoption of the budget of the authority, and adoption of the scale of assessment for the contributions to the budget of the authority. So first, I would like to turn to agenda item 12 of the provisional agenda, report of the Finance Committee. In this connection, I draw your attention to the following two documents. One, the report of the Finance Committee contained in ISPA/27/A/18 stroke ISPA Oh, sorry, there seemed to be a correction here. The reference should be, I believe, ISPA/27/A/8 stroke ISPA/27/C/21. My apologies. I will try again. I now have the document in front of me. The reference, I believe, should be ISPA/27/A/8 stroke ISPA/27/C/36. That is the first document I would like to draw your attention to. And the second one is the proposed budget for the International Seabed Authority for the financial period 2023 to 2024, contained in ISPA/27/A/3/add1/rev1 ISPA/27/C/22/add1/rev1. So those are the two documents I would like to draw your attention to now. In this connection, as the President of the Council reported this Monday, the Council has considered the report of the Finance Committee and adopted a decision relating to financial and budgetary matters as contained in ISPA/27/C/40, which is also available on the website of the authority. In the decision, the Council recommends that the Assembly, 1, approves the budget for the financial period 2023 to 2024 in the amount of $22,256,000 as proposed by the Secretary General. 2, authorizes the Secretary General to establish the scale of assessments for 2023 and 2024 on the basis of the scale used for the regular budget of the United Nations for the period 2022 to 2024, taking into account that the maximum assessment rate will be 22% and the minimum rate 0.01%. 3 also authorizes the Secretary General for 2023 and 2024 to transfer between sections, subsections, and programs up to 15% of the amount of each section, subsection, or program. 4 urges the members of the authority to pay as soon as possible their assessed contributions to the budget on time and in full. And finally, 5 calls upon members of the authority with outstanding contributions to the budget of the authority, including from the period 1998 to 2021, to pay them as soon as possible to enable the authority to deliver effectively on its mandates. In addition, the Finance Committee recommends to the Assembly the following. A, to authorize the Secretary General to establish the International Seabed Authority Partnership Fund as a trust fund of the authority pursuant to Financial Regulation 5.5 for the purposes set out in the terms of reference contained in Annex 2 to the report of the Finance Committee. B, to authorize the Secretary General to draw down an amount not exceeding US dollars 400,000 per year from 2022 to 2026 from the capital and accumulated interest of the International Seabed Authority Endowment Fund for Marine Scientific Research as a contribution to the Partnership Fund to be used exclusively for the purposes set out in the terms of reference. And finally, C, to call upon the members of the authority, other states, contractors, relevant international organizations, academic, scientific, and technical institutions, philanthropic organizations, corporations, and private persons to make contribution to the Partnership Fund. I would also like to inform you that I believe the chairman of the Finance Committee is with us virtually to respond to any question or clarification from delegations under this agenda item. So I would now like to open the floor, please. I see no requests for the floor. Therefore, I invite the Assembly to take up agenda items 13 and 14 concerning adoption of the budget of the authority and adoption of the scale of assessment for the contributions to the budget of the authority. In this connection, I invite the Assembly to consider the draft decision of the Assembly relating to financial and budgetary matters as contained in document ISBA/27/A/L2. I recognize the distinguished representative of Chile, please. You have the floor.
Gracias, señor presidente. Chile reconoce y agradece el informe presentado por el secretario general en su documento ISBA 27A3-AD1, ISBA 27A3-AD1 Rep 1 y valora las recomendaciones efectuadas al Consejo por el Comité de Finanzas ISBA 27C36. Y en este sentido, la delegación de Chile desea referirse a los siguientes puntos en particular. En relación a los casos de auditoría, el Comité de Finanzas, en su informe al Consejo, señaló que solicitó a la Secretaría que estudiara la posibilidad de recurrir a la Junta de Auditores de las Naciones Unidas para que realizara la auditoría en los ejercicios futuros. Sin embargo, la razón por la cual no se opta por dicha auditoría sería porque es más caro. En efecto, el informe indica que dicha auditoría en tarifas del 2022 tendría un costo de $38.820 al año versus los $22.000 que cuesta la auditoría que realiza Ernst & Young. Sobre el particular, la delegación de Chile estima que, por razones de transparencia, no resulta adecuado monopolizar las auditorías año a año a una sola empresa. Por ello, la delegación de Chile solicita a la Asamblea pronunciarse respecto a la posibilidad de, tal como recomienda el Comité de Finanzas, recurrir a la Junta de Auditores de Naciones Unidas, no obstante que tengamos que pagar un poco más por ello. Si es necesario, la delegación de Chile propone evaluar disminuir gastos de representación de cara a la difícil situación económica que vive el mundo después de haber sufrido la crisis sanitaria de COVID-19. Ello permitiría contar